It has started.
Great, thank you. I'd like to call to order. Good morning, everyone, and welcome you to our August 17th Policy and Governance Committee meeting. It is now 10:01, and we'll start the meeting by calling attendance. Let's start with Edwin Shirley.
Present.
Thank you. Julianne Avalon.
Present.
Avery Gaddis.
Present.
Ojala Naeem. Michael Jefferson.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Paul Robertson, Chair of the Social Equity Council, and the reason I'm opening this meeting is because the Council has consolidated its committees and with the intention of streamlining and increasing resources for the focus work of the Council. And my role this morning is to call for the nomination and vote for this committee chair. Do I have any nominations for chair of this committee? Please note members of the committee may also self-nominate.
Mr. Chairman, through you,
Yes.
I'll stand down, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand down.
Please go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Ed Shirley for chair. Ed has done a wonderful job, outstanding job, actually, running policy. I believe in the old adage, if it ain't broke, why fix it? So I'd like to see him continue in that capacity. I think he'll serve the position well. So
Second.
I nominate Ed Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaddis.
And thank you, Councilman Jefferson.
Thank you.
Let's see, I also have to go through, are there any other nominations? I'll ask one more time. Any other nominations? Then let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Congratulations, Chairman Shirley. I will now turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Councilman Jefferson and Councilman Gaddis for their support. We have a really strong committee, and it's both challenging and supportive. So I do appreciate the nomination, and I'll do my best to serve the council and this committee as well as I can. And with that, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the issue of residency and income criteria and the ownership and control updates.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you very much. As we all know, the statute has been amended. Public Act 21-1 has been amended, and few things have changed with regard to the criteria. So it was important for the Social Equity Council to update these criteria and provide notice to the public of the update. On that, this is the current residency criteria. We've changed the statutory language and reference as the law has changed. And the major change here is in the previous criteria, it was indicated that the applicant must have resided in a disproportionately impacted area for at least 5 of the 10 years immediately before applying for the license, or 9 years before they turn age or 18. Throughout the application process last year, Mr. Chair, we found that many social equity applicants were confused because some of them alleged in complaints that they didn't know that they had to be there 5 full years of those past 10 years or 9 full years. They thought if they lived there for a shorter period of time, so long as it's part of those that time frame, it will meet the criteria. That's not the case. So we updated the criteria to clarify that further, that it is 5 full years and 9 full years in the DIA during the times referenced in the statute. Other than that, we went over the document that were required by the council last year in light of some of the administrative court decisions that came down. In light of some of the administrative court decisions that came down last year, we were able to remove Social Security card from the current proposed residency criteria, and we provided clarification regarding birth certificate as well as affidavit. So with all those changes, the current language that we're proposing with regard to those documents will be as follows. Applicant must submit a long-form birth certificate, or if not available, a birth certificate that shows at minimum the name of the child, the date of birth of the child, and the names of the parents. Applicant whose birth certificate are not in English language must submit a copy of the original birth certificate accompanied by a certified English translation. It is our belief that this clarification will be very helpful to the applicant and the entire industry as well. With regard to affidavit, we did clarify that the Social Security Council may consider third-party affidavit. Now, these third-party affidavit are different from self-provided affidavit or me writing an affidavit on my own behalf just to say why I meet the criteria. It means if I go to school, for instance, at the Torrington High School, a principal or former principal over there could submit an affidavit to the council, but we're insisting that the affidavit must be supported by any of the documents that are listed on this form, on this criteria form. So any other document. So affidavit will be reviewed by the council at its own discretion. So the council can read it and see if that affidavit is providing the council what the council needs to make the determination that the person has met the criteria. So that was another change that we made. When it comes to income criteria, we simply corrected the statute, removed the previous statutory language because the statutory references have changed, and nothing really changed during this past legislative session on income criteria is still the same household income requirement as before. And the documentation to submit as proof of income, we didn't remove any, and we didn't add any new document as well. So that's about it for residency and income. Before I go to ownership and control document, if anyone has any questions, I will happily try to answer. Councilmember Comer.
Yes, good morning, and apologies if this was already sort of discussed because I know I joined a few minutes late. By adding the word full, are we changing the intent of the statute? Because I know it doesn't say full in the statute, but when we're talking about the 5 full years and 9 full years, is there an implication in terms of the meaning of the statute when we add that word?
Thank you so much, Councilmember, for asking that question. We are not changing the statute by adding the word full because our interpretation since last year has been consistent that the statute, the way it was written, it meant you have to be there for the 5 full years. It's just that the public didn't know that. And since the statute gives the council the ability to create the criteria based on the statute, the council should take this opportunity to make that clarification to the public. And we did conduct serious legal research to ensure that that didn't change the meaning of the statute.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. And Komala, just to make sure I understand, you're saying that even though we did not specifically say full years, In some cases, we had applicants who just misinterpreted that in our experience. They looked at it and thought that if they were just if they had been a resident for some part of a calendar year, that that would have them qualify. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, Chairman Shirley, that's what we're saying. Currently, there's a lawsuit pending at the appellate court where the plaintiff is alleging that. That's just one of the plaintiffs alleging that. There are other instances where people have alleged that, but even the court understand that it means 5 full years because the Superior Court has sustained the Social Security Council's decision to deny that applicant because they didn't live in the DIA for 5 full years. So, but a recommendation was made that the council clarifies that further to the public. So we are introducing that word full just so it is clear so no one in the future can say they are confused about this.
Okay, thanks. I understand there's some concern that we have council members who may be new, who might not understand exactly what we're referring to, and might need more time to consider the updates that we're making because they were not necessarily aware of the original documents. In which case, am I correct there?
I'm not sure.
Through Chairman Shirley, just to comment that there are a couple of hands up. I don't know if you can see them as well. I didn't mean to interrupt, but just kind of keep an eye.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I see Councilmember Comer's hand.
Actually, I yield to Councilwoman Avalon because she had her hand up.
Okay, I don't see that. I'm sorry.
No problem. So just one question I had about the affidavits was, it says that you can submit an affidavit, but it has to be accompanied by proof of the records in D. So my confusion is, if they have to still provide one of the records in D, then the affidavit is just another document on top of it. Like it doesn't actually provide a different route to getting approval. And if you're not going to provide a different route for getting approval, I would recommend eliminating the affidavit section because it just doesn't do anything.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Council Member Avalon, I will disagree because in some cases, for instance, we've had a case where the applicant was able to provide some documentation to show that he did go to that school, but it wasn't very much sufficient. So in those cases, for instance, that applicant could further submit an affidavit from a principal or his former teacher from that school who could testify that yes, and provide further clarification about the person's attendance at the institution. So it's in scenarios and situations like that that the third-party affidavit can be important when the documentation provided by itself is not fully clear or enough to account for the residency. In those situations, the applicant can submit a third-party affidavit to provide that clarification. And that is something that throughout the administrative appeals process, we've seen as well, because the Superior Court judge has sent back one of the appeal to the council and allow the social equity applicants affidavit and the other material to account for it. And the feedback we receive is that if third-party institutional officers like principals, pastors, if those folks can shed more light on partial document or document that people provided to show that they went to this institution, considering that the record retention policy for many of these institutions is limited to 10 years. When people are submitting for the first 9 years of their life, for instance, it becomes a little difficult to have all document accounting for each single year. So if I can prove, for instance, that from 2 years old to 9 years old, I was there, but at year 7, I don't have any proof that I was there. An affidavit from someone can come and provide those explanations. So I would recommend that we keep the third-party affidavit so long as it's not a self-serving affidavit.
I think it possibly just isn't clear. Maybe we could potentially work on clarifying that language a bit to better reflect that. And when we talk about having the affidavit, though, you're talking about having the affidavit come in simultaneously with the initial application, correct? You're not, or this isn't a shift to say if we're missing year 7, then subsequently we will let them clarify the application after it's been submitted.
Yeah, our hope is that they will submit the affidavit. Folks, when they are applying, they know how many years they are establishing because it's very easy for them to do so. And if they notice a gap, then they should be able to get something like an affidavit to provide explanation of why there's a gap. And the council, at his own discretion, will review that to see if that is something reasonable to accept.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Avalon.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I sense some unreadiness. Plus, as a council member who has been on the council since its inception, I think it's only fair and equitable that we give some of our new council members time to get brought up to speed on some of the dynamics surrounding what we're talking about today. And I also need to get comfortable with what we're talking about today. And if it's no problem, I move that we table this matter to the September 12th meeting in order for everyone to get brought up to speed, Mr. Chairman. That's my motion.
Thank you for that, Councilman Gaddis. There's a motion on the table.
I'll
May I
second.
get we have a second. Are there any questions? If not, I'd like to have a vote. All those in favor of the motion presented by Councilman Gaddis indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Just, I guess, I don't know, I
Mr.
saw
Chair,
the executive director's hand go up.
I'm
Through
sorry.
you, Mr. Chair.
Did I miss
Yeah.
someone's?
No, it was for after the vote. I think I hit raised my hand too soon. I would just say that we would offer office hours for all council members to go over this information to make sure there is clarity.
Thank you for that, Director Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, council members, for understanding.
Now, we've taken a vote, so we are tabling this until our next meeting, this issue of residency.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, through you, I just have a quick question about meeting dates. Councilman Gaddis said September 12th. What date is that? Which meeting are we talking about?
September 12th is the next full council meeting. It was changed from September 6th to September 12th.
Okay, so we're not saving this to the policy meeting, we're saving it for the full council meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Let me ask, is that the, Councilman Gaddis, was that your motion that we're saving it for the full council or for the next, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand, the next policy meeting?
My motion was intended to present this matter at the next appropriate forum, whether it's this committee or the council itself. wherever it needs to go. So if we need to clean up the language, fine. But the intent is to not deal with it today and give people time to get brought up to speed and deal with it at the appropriate venue the next time, whether it's here or at the full council meeting.
Thank you
And it
for
really
that.
doesn't matter where it's taken up, to be quite candid. That's just a mechanics process thing.
Okay, so the sooner, the sooner meeting would be the full council meeting, and Chairman Robertson, do you want to comment on that? Is that,
Yeah, yes, I would confer with Councilman Gaddis that when is the next policy meeting? Do we have that, Attorney Montrevi?
September 21st.
September 21st. Yes, I'd say we could move it to either if the council is agree to that, September 21st would work. But if that is not, if we don't have a full group for the committee members, then I'd move it to the full council. So right now, I would look at initially as soon as possible, which would be the 21st.
so then that would be the next policy committee meeting.
Correct.
All right.
So through you, Mr. Chair,
oh,
so through you, Mr. Chair, if there's no objection, I would might like to amend my motion to reflect that date. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. So we're moving this discussion to our next policy committee meeting, which is on the 21st of September. The idea is to present this to the board at the October meeting. All right.
And I just,
Uh,
through you,
yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm that in the meantime, prior to the September 21st meeting, we will offer office hours to all members of the council.
Thank you, Director Clay. Appreciate that. And I see your hand. Did you have another statement you'd like to make, Director?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Through you, I'd like to also hopefully recommend that we have probably the previous version so that there could be a comparison, but we could take that offline. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next issue
I'm sorry,
is,
through you, Mr.
yes,
Mr. Chair.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I know
Go
you,
ahead.
you can't see folks. I just want to make sure that procedurally we did what we were supposed to do, because I knew we took a vote and then the motion was amended. I just want to make sure that if it's amended after the vote is taken, that there's not an issue. I'm just, parliamentarily, I'm not certain.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's why I prefaced my remarks by saying if there's no objection. Had there been
Okay.
an objection, I would have had to redo the motion in a more appropriate manner. But the fact that it was no objection means that everyone consented to that amendment after the fact.
Perfect.
we're
Thank you
covered
so
there.
much. Thank you,
welcome.
Councilman Gaddis.
Thank you. Are there any other questions around that particular amendment? If not, we'll move on to the next issue, which is the next item on the agenda, which is legislative recommendations, I believe, for submission, a discussion with Christina Diamond.
I just want to note that Julianne Avalon had a comment, so I'll let
Yes.
her go.
I
Sorry.
can't see hands, I'm sorry.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I was just wondering that I believe we also had to address the ownership and control prior to moving on to the next agenda item. Since we went through residency only.
Right. I was thinking that we would table the entire issue until the next meeting, so ownership and control as well as residency, et cetera. I mean, they're part of the same document. So that was my understanding about the motion, but that we would move this to our next policy committee meeting, the entire discussion. But
It
is
makes
there?
sense, Mr. Chair.
Okay, my only question is, as part of this process, typically, you would have the Attorney General's office review the document in full, prior to publishing this, especially since they have been so actively involved in litigation. My question is just kind of when we involve them in this process to make sure that there's enough time between the policy committee and any office hours and the October 3rd meeting. Just kind of throwing that out there as a factor in the timeline.
Thank
Could
you for
repeat
that.
please? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand, Councilman Avalon. What's the issue now?
So, I mean, as we're all aware, there have been a number of lawsuits filed related to residency and ownership and control. And as the attorneys for the, excuse me, and as the attorneys for the, well, obviously we have in-house counsel, but, as our litigation counsel, I think it's prudent to involve them in any final document before it is approved by the council. And so I think they just have to be factored into that timeline of whenever we're meeting and potentially making substantive changes. I know there were certainly some flags for me that I wanted some further conversation with, especially in ownership and control. They need to have, or at least, sorry, it's my opinion that they should probably be involved and have time to review and approve a final document.
Got it. Why don't we ask Attorney Matravy to present us with a schedule that would accommodate your concern. So there'll be a discussion. We're discussing this at our next policy committee meeting. So either before that, or I guess sometime after that, it would be submitted to the Attorney General. Is that correct?
Okay, I would like to provide some clarification, Mr. Chair. So the language that we're proposing for these criteria have already been approved by the Attorney General's office. It's been jointly drafted and already approved by the Attorney General's office as of last week. If you want the Attorney General's office to go over all of this again, I can certainly do that, have them do that. I'll have to talk to them to figure out when all of this will be ready for the committee to be discussing. So I will have to get back with you on that.
Okay, so it sounds as if this language has already been approved by the Attorney General. There is some unreadiness on the part of council members, committee members. And so are you suggesting then that as we review, if we don't make any changes, if we get comfortable with the current language, there'd be no need to resubmit to the Attorney General?
Chairperson Shirley, what I'm suggesting is that we, as Director Clay already pointed out, we could have office hours. So usually before the full council sit to discuss these matters, we'll have office hours for the members, other members who are not members of this committee, to come and discuss these criteria. If there are no new language proposed or new criteria proposed by the members of this committee or the other members during those office hours that we could introduce into the criteria and amend the criteria before presenting to the full council, then we will bring the criteria in its current language to the council. But if there are any changes or amendment due to those discussions, then we'll have to work with it and work together with, of course, our AG's office, which are always implicated in this process, because as Councilmember Avalon pointed out, they are doing the litigation and receiving the recommendation from the judges, sending it to us, which is why we're drafting the languages the way it is currently. So that's how we can work this out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, may I comment? Attorney Matravy,
Yes.
I think in the document, were there comments or responses from the attorney? You're saying that it was fully approved by the Attorney General's office?
Yes. So when I say it's fully approved, so the criteria, determining the social equity criteria, those things fall under policy decisions that only the Social Equity Council can make. But the AG's office, we can have a advisory informal advisory opinion on this type of issues, and that's what I'm referring to. Because
May I ask Attorney Trevi, were there any issues on the side of the Attorney General or comments that might have been germane to the council that you would share, or is that just kind of it was part of the process? In other words, seeing kind of the feedback from either the Attorney General's office or this process, as you said, in terms of approval.
So the process in terms of approval, the criteria only needs to be approved by the Social Equity Council. No other agencies will have to formally approve it before it goes into effect. What we did is the due diligence, getting the Attorney General's office to review it, just to get second opinion on it. And we've gone through several drafts because obviously things have evolved. For instance, for the 5 full years, that was a specific recommendation from the AG's office that it be put in the and others. So what I could do is that we could ask them to provide, and I'm not sure they will do that, to join us in office hours to go over this with the members, if that's what the committee is comfortable with.
I guess the question I'm asking is in terms of just that that it was full approval on that part, or there were comments in terms of pushback, just so the council knows, in terms of if there was a differing opinion. And when you say full approval by the Attorney General's office, I just want to be clear that there weren't any outstanding matters, or at least that the council is aware of all matters concerning its, criteria going back and forth.
Yeah, our attorneys over there are fully in agreement. They are aware that the policy committee is hearing these criteria today, and they are satisfied with the criteria that we are presenting to this committee with the changes as presented so far.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we
and
can
they
get
have no
confirmation.
other.
So yeah, no,
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. So we can get confirmation from the Attorney General's office that they are that there are no other outstanding issues and that we are all aligned. I just want to make sure the council
Yes.
and that office is aligned, because we go back and ask them for stuff, and I just want to make sure that that's crystal clear.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. So
Okay.
there are no other outstanding issues regarding these criteria, all three of them. There are no other outstanding issues with regard to the AG's office. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll now defer to Councilwoman Comer.
Thank you. And thank you, Attorney Matrevi. I agree that, statutorily, it is this body that sort of sets the parameters. I think where I'm, sort of seeking confirmation is because at the end of the day, when these lawsuits come up, it is the Attorney General's office that has to defend our position. And so just for our own, I guess, collective comfort level, it would be great to just have them, get some sort of communication from them that says, yes, this all makes sense from the position of having to defend us in the event of further litigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Comer. I will get that confirmation to the chair of the council and the committee, and he will pass it along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Chairman Shirley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if
Yes, sir.
that's what's happening, because that was my sense that the information that Attorney Matrevi is providing us did in fact go through the AG's office, or Attorney Matrevi is making it up himself. I
No.
figure that he went through the Attorney General's office in order to get the appropriate language to prevent further litigation in the future. But if the Attorney General's office is offering us this language and this information, then I don't know how much wiggle room we have as a council to change the language, or we can certainly ask questions about it to get a fuller understanding, but we can't tinker with the information or the language that they're providing us through Attorney Matrevi. I don't see why if we're meeting, I would only hope we're meeting to gain an understanding of the change in the policy that's being recommended.
Thank you for that. Councilman Jefferson, sorry for the interruption here. But are there any
No
other?
problem. And one last
Yes, sir.
comment. Through you, Mr. Chair. I have a hard stop. I have to get back in the court, but those are my 2 cents. I'll follow up with you later on to get further discuss matters
Sure.
of the policy committee, because I have to get back into court.
Thank you for that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilman Jefferson. And are there any other comments around these issues of residency, income, ownership, and control? I don't see any other hands at this point. So let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion on legislative recommendation process. That's with Christina.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And of course, the landscapers are coming by as I'm about to speak, so I apologize for that. We are recommending that we follow the same process as we did last year. Council members will have the opportunity to provide feedback and submit their recommendations to me. We are asking that the council do that by September 1st. And then I'll take the council's recommendations and add them to the staff's recommendation and send that document to the entire council. And the staff will hold office hours for members that have any questions about the recommendations, and those office hours will be scheduled before the next policy committee meeting. And then at that September 21st policy committee meeting, the council members will vote to recommend, to vote on the recommendations. And then the 2024 legislative proposal is due to OTG and OPM by October 2nd. And then the full council will vote on recommendations after the staff receives feedback from OTG and OPM. And I will send out an email to the entire council later today outlining this process. And so with that, if there are any, I can take any questions. Councilwoman Avalon.
Hi, so through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to kind of clarify the timeline for this as well. Excuse me. So was my understanding that the council would have to vote on the legislative proposals, which would mean having the language in full prior to the next council meeting. And if the October meeting is one day after when proposals are due into the governor's office with full language drafted, then it seems like the next policy committee meeting is too late. I would expect then that we would have the full language drafted and available for us to comment and vote on by the 12th. And so I'm just wondering if this policy committee believes that maybe a resolution would be made at the next full council meeting, that they would defer to the vote of the policy committee on the 21st, that's one thing. But if we think that this is something which, the legislative agenda is rather impactful, if this is something we think the full council should be able to weigh in on, then I would request that this timeline be expedited.
So last year, what we did last year is that the policy committee voted on the recommendations that were sent to OTG and OPM. And as I said, the full council will see all of those recommendations. I'll be sending them out to everybody. And then the full council did not vote on the recommendations last year until after we received feedback from OTG and OPM, and that was a final legislative proposal. And that's what we did last year.
I appreciate that was based on the timeline of last year. That's how it happened. I will say, as someone who was not a member last year, It makes me very nervous that we would approve a concept but not language, since every word matters in legislative drafting, and to make sure that generally what we intend to happen is specifically what we have down on paper. So I would request the full proposal before voting on anything.
So just so I understand, Councilwoman Avalon, what's the timeline that you are suggesting?
So since we only have one
And
council
I'm sorry,
meeting,
not just the timeline, but I'm sorry, but just the sequence of events.
so since we only have one full council meeting prior to the deadline for final submission, I would request that prior to the 12th, that we have full language sent out to us, and considering that there may be numerous proposals, that it's sent out to us a number of days in advance. Like it would be awful to receive it on a Monday, and then actually I think we're meeting on a Thursday, but no, we're meeting on a Tuesday rather. So it wouldn't be fruitful to get it on a Monday and then have to read a dozen pages by Tuesday. So I would request that the final language be, or the proposed language, sorry, the proposed language be sent to us no later, I don't know, like the 5th or the 6th. So, a week in advance.
Of September, you're saying?
Of September, yes. And so, I would imagine that the staff of the Social Equity Council has proposals in mind that, they can certainly start putting together now, and maybe it's worth, whether it's putting together a pitch package at this point to just see if there's anything additional from the council members that they want to raise that's not incorporated into the ideas that you already have. And then, yes, maybe you're asking the council members to provide legislative input, I don't know, by end of next week, by the 28th. I think if you just get that feedback in sooner and at the same time are working on the proposals from the staff, then that would give us sufficient amount of time to consider something at the 12th meeting. Because we're not going to be doing ownership and control on the 12th, which was going to, not just ownership, the ownership and control and residency, which was going to be the bulk of that meeting. So now we have some time to do something else.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm clear. You're suggesting then that the policy committee take a look at certain concepts that we wish to submit as recommendations to Christina here, and then the Attorney General's office take a look at that and make sure the language is acceptable.
Oh, sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, so sorry. I was not recommending the Attorney General be inserted into this process. I was saying that again, and this is I'm throwing out random dates here. So, I really welcome the feedback of all the other council members, but the idea being that the staff of the Social Equity Council start drafting their recommended proposals now. So not just the concept, but the specific language with brackets and underlines. They start doing that now. An email goes out to the full council that recommends that, or that states if they have proposals that they'd like to have included in the legislative package, to send a summary of the idea by August 25th. So they'll give them a week to provide feedback in. Then a week before the Social Equity Council meeting, so by end of day on August 5th, the package that is comprised of both the proposals from staff and the proposals from the council with full language is sent out to all council members. And then the council as a whole can then discuss this at the meeting on the 12th, but because they'll be able to have sufficient time to really go through it. And so just an idea.
Awesome. And that would, Christina, would that be the charge of you or Attorney Montrevi and the executive director, or a collective in terms of meeting the deadlines? Would that be our
Collective.
executive director, Clay? Or the three?
Yeah, collective.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone that's involved, like the, you know, in terms of the timelines and the dates, so that who we can look to ensure that we're following that timeline. Thank you.
And by the time you're saying by the time the Social Equity Council sees this at our next meeting, then it's all, the concepts have been submitted and the language has been approved. And it's just a matter of, not just, but it's a matter of the council of voting on that, on a complete package. I'm asking, is that what we're suggesting? Is that what we're recommending?
That the council would be able to vote on the full package with actual language.
With
Yes.
approved language, got it, okay.
Correct.
All right, so do we, Chairman Robinson, do we need a resolution for that, for what was just stated, or no?
No, I don't believe so. As I said, that's why I was clarifying in terms of who would be responsible for the timeline, in terms of if we're looking to the executive director, Attorney Montrevi, or Christina Diamond, just to make sure that, you know, we're checking in and on schedule, because this is such a tight window. So I think as far as, I think we're good, unless there are any other comments. Councilman Gaddis?
Yes, to be clear, Mr. Chairman, the executive director owns that timeline. Let's not be ambiguous about it. It's her ship, she owns it. So that's who we're going to look to, okay?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And again, to you, Chairman Shirley, I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Are there any other comments? I think we have an understanding on this issue. So it's in the hands of our executive director, and then we will look. Is there one other question on this? So is there an issue? Is there a point in time when the policy committee has to act on this before it's presented to the full council? You know, I'm just trying to understand what the elements are in terms of the sequence of events. No.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I'm sorry. The question was is there a point within this sequence of events that the policy committee, as a committee, has to, you know, make approvals, or has to approve a presentation to the Social Equity Council, or to the full council, or no? In your thinking, in terms of this sequence of events, I'm just trying to understand.
If my memory,
Honestly, I don't think we have time. That's my only, I think in
Okay.
a perfect world, if we had started this previously, then yes, absolutely. Then we should have been considering language at the policy committee that occurred prior to the council meeting, but
Okay. Yeah.
we're not there. So I just don't think we have time.
Got it. All right. So the full council will act on the package. At that point, the language will have been approved, and the concept submitted, language approved. Council votes. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay. Our next item then is so we're skipping
The
that.
reinstatement of the public comment sessions.
Right, the reinstatement of public comments. There've been some discussion around that as to how useful those public comment sessions were as they existed in the past. And a reinstatement might require some amendment, shall we say, or some changes that would make them more productive. and to try to eliminate some of the disruption that that occurred in the past. Are there any suggestions with regard to how we proceed?
I would say in terms of the public, I'm sorry, Attorney, Councilman Gaddis.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Do we have to have public input? Is it necessary or required or optional on our part?
It is not required, through you, Mr. Chair, it is not required. I know there was legislation proposed last session that would require public comment at meetings, but that measure was not successful, so short answer is no.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how others feel, but these public comments make me nervous, and I don't really like them in any form, to be honest with you. Democracy is a good idea, but no one likes it until you have to use it. I don't want to hear from people. And the profile of people we get at these meetings are not the folks who come out with a thoughtful presentation. Some of them do, don't get me wrong. But if you get 10 people who come out, 8 of them are going to just tee off on us. And I'm a little sensitive.
Thank you for your candor.
Thank you for that. Did I see Councilwoman Comer's hand?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I guess just to piggyback off Councilman Gaddis's comments, I think that early on when we had the public comment session, the comments themselves were dominated by issues with the medical marijuana program over which we have no purview. So, while I also am sensitive, I also do believe in democracy, but I think that the commentary needs to be centered on the issues that over which we have control, right? So maybe it is folks being required to sort of, indicate, sign up early, let us know what the topic is of discussion, because the other thing that happened was the folks that we really needed to hear from as we develop these policies and procedures, namely the social equity applicants, often did not get an opportunity to speak because of the fact that there was, this long list of folks speaking to an issue over which we had no control. So that's my commentary. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, and again, thank you both, Councilman Gaddis and Comer. I've actually had conversations with our executive director in terms of, yes, there are people that we need to hear from. And I think in terms of addressing the public and really, really listening, because as I've been on a couple of events, I think it's important to hear what the public is saying. I think the best method of that, and we have the technology, is a website and a dedicated person maybe within the SEC that we've also discussed in terms of, so that we can address and maybe bring those to the meeting to say, hey, listen, we've had several comments, whether it's website or calls, that we could include as part of the meeting. And that way, is again, we're listening to the public. We can, credit those that are asking and find a place for it. But I'm with both and most council members in terms of saying opening it up could really not help our efficiency in terms of getting our job and our mission accomplished. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a way for those who would like to see some public accommodation here? Is there a way that we can filter those kinds of requests for comment? And is there an expedient way to set something up that we could take a look at what people want to ask, give them an opportunity to submit early on, and then we could choose the ones we want to address at our meetings?
Well, that's why I recommended the website, because they said you could easily, and again, the technology is there, we could easily field, as many or as few, and then we could collect that information, that data, we could share it. I mean, we could even go down to recording in terms of people needed to record it if that was in need. But we could also, again, we could be really efficient and decisive in terms of, again, delivering a service back to the public and making sure that they're heard. That would be my recommendation in terms of if we were to do that, is to go through a website or have a dedicated person within the SEC to field phone calls for issues that are not robotic or not, frequently asked questions. I think it would also make it more personable in terms of responding back, because I'm very sensitive to that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question for Executive Director Clay, is there a way that we could establish that without, it being an overly cumbersome task? So
We're
that we
looking
can
into it. I've had conversations with Chairman Robinson, and we are looking into the possibility of how we can make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think at this point, we're at
For the
the
good,
good of the order.
correct.
If there are no other items, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved. A second.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
For your comment. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
support,
Thank
and
you.
look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations,
you.
Chairman Shirley. Thank you all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Bye.
Executive Director.